Hello, and welcome to Painting with Stephen episode 22. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're watching this, and let's get right into it. So, this is, sort of still on the subject of tombs, like haunting, creepy, sort of fantasy-esque painting. I think what's really interesting with this one is that originally I was sort of maybe sticking to more of a romantic inspired type painting, but then really with the setting and the colours that I decided to use with this one, it sort of came out a little bit more dreary, dark, and symbolisty, and I like it. I like the way it turned out. I always wanted it to specifically be very umbery. The umbery aspect was very important to me. I wanted even the sky to essentially be umbery, mostly because just really to experiment. I know that if I did my usual moonlit sky type colours, where for example I incorporated a bit of an umbery greyish blue, with dark clouds and highlights to the clouds, that would still be a nice contrast to the cave, which obviously when you see me paint the cave I'll explain what that will entail, but realistically with this, I think I wanted everything to be maybe a bit more harmonious, still have a contrast, but maybe for the umber and the orangey glow coming from the cave to all sort of maybe homogenize a little bit, and for the moonlit night to be very, very dark and moody looking. Almost like an alien-esque landscape. When I say alien, maybe certainly I think maybe haunting-ish. A very sort of dark, dreary, not quite sure what time of day it is, not really sure, whether it's summer, autumn, or winter, or spring. Just a creepy, ominous sky, a creepy, ominous landscape. And if you've watched any of my other painting tutorials on this channel, you'll see that I've done a lot of tombs, a lot of cairns. This sort of topic is quite close to me, quite close to my heart, not just because of the symbolic weight of it, but also just the innate atmosphere that these places have. And I think this is a slightly different approach again to these places of the dead and the underworld, and the symbolic value that these things can have, in terms of how it acts as a microcosmic example for societies, for the way our society's headed, whatever. But with this, I more wanted it to just be almost a straight up atmosphere painting. There wasn't any symbolism going into it at all, like with my Every Empire Must Fall painting, or my Tomb of the Defamed Philosopher painting, or any of that sort of stuff. It was more just I wanted to paint something very sort of intriguing, creepy, and fantasy-esque. So but when I say fantasy-esque, I think what an important distinction is when you say fantasy paintings, usually I think people think of almost like digital art, or they think of almost like these sort of very stylized cinematic sort of shot type paintings. Whereas I'm more sort of, I suppose, going back to slightly more traditional compositions, but making fantasy atmospheres with them, which I think is maybe a slightly different approach to what you would see as nowadays as conventional fantasy painting. But yeah, like I think I'm gonna call this painting maybe something like Sequestered Ceremonies, or secret ceremonies in ancient caves, or secret ceremonies in ancient tombs, or something like that. I've not quite decided on a name yet, but I want it to have that that sort of symbolic power of a tomb, combined with that sort of creepy mystery of like, why is there someone in there, and the fact that you can't see the person in there. I changed setting and camera angle here. Sorry about the disruptions, but I painted this over a 2-week period, and like, I've seen a lot of people do camera angles like this. I don't know if I like it that much, because like, for one, obviously, like, I don't have like a super professional setup, but also the fact that you can't really see what my brush strokes are like. I know my other camera angle isn't ideal, but we'll make do. Realistically, I think producing anything in terms of video is better than producing nothing. I think that's a very important point. Like, realistically, you just have to put your paintings out there, and hope that someone will be able to get something from it. And I think that's a really sort of important point when it comes to art in general. You're always better doing than not doing. I really do believe that. And we've discussed it extensively on this channel before. Realistically, I think people come up with a whole host of reasons not to do something. Like, for example, I don't have a good space to film on. Yeah, okay, that might put a lot of people off of your videos, and that's fair enough, but realistically, some people might still be able to learn something from them, or like them, and you yourself, might be able to learn from the process. So why not just do it? I was trying to make this cave is quite an unusual shape, which I sort of like. It's almost like I don't even know what to compare it to, actually. It's like a sort of big hovel almost, and it was quite interesting to paint, because of where the highlights would be and exactly what colours to utilise. I wanted the rock that made up this hovel, or this cave, to definitely like sort of link up with the ominous looking staircase that you'll see me paint later on, that I've sort of roughly sketched out here. And I wanted it all to sort of amalgamate into one rock formation, as if the stairs were pretty much built in to the solid rock that the cave also was made out of. So that was sort of like the general idea for the painting, and that was the general idea for the sketches that I utilised with the painting. I also just want to apologise profusely for the camera shake. So the reason that this is such a sort of almost a temperamental way to film, and I think again this was an experiment filming from these camera angles, but realistically I think one of the reasons why it didn't work was the fact that it shakes a little bit whenever I move to paint. because of how unstable the flooring is in that area of the house. So realistically, I might just go back to the original setup, but I think it was still, and I think it's also still like good for viewers to see maybe a slightly different angle of the painting process, because it gives you a different color perspective. Maybe makes you see things in a slightly different light. I just want to quickly talk about the sky again, and also why I wanted a lot of this umber to shine through. I wanted it to have this sort of dark, eerie atmosphere, but not go for my usual blues that I usually do. And I also wanted to leave a lot of that base umber layer shining through in the sky as highlights behind the cave. And as you can see, it sort of almost looks like light is coming from behind the cave, which I like that. I wanted to keep that in to a certain extent and not disrupt it too much, because I thought that was quite a cool effect. The umber around the moon, though, isn't actually the base layer. I painted that in a darker colour. But I think overall, it lended itself pretty well. Like that, the combination of the raw umber base layer with more umber layers on top, and then obviously some Payne's grey, some white. Yeah, it's sort of it all ended up sort of producing a very sort of monochrome effect, which is sort of what I wanted to do. Obviously this is big in the tonalist thing. A lot of tonalist painters like Dennis Sheehan and all these guys, they paint these monochromatic paintings, and obviously M. Francis McCarthy, Michael McCarthy, he does the same, well, not the same thing as Sheehan, in the sense that Sheehan will usually start with a base color layer and then wipe away. I've also seen Stuart Davis do the same thing on YouTube, and I learnt from all of these guys because I'm a self-taught painter. So, but again, like I've not, I suppose, gone the same way. Obviously my style has deviated a lot from what these guys are doing, because a lot of that wipe away thing, is sort of, firstly, is oils. So you're utilizing oils because they're wet, and so you can paint wet on wet and then wipe away to expose the base layer for your highlights. So if you have this nice umber layer, for example, on wet oils, and then you have the white of the canvas behind it, you can wipe away to sort of let some of that highlight colour come through. What's going on here though is a bit different, in the sense that it's obviously acrylic layers, so they're fast drying, and there's many layers being layered on top of each other in quick succession. But what's also going on is you can allow some of that base layer to still shine through and still get a highlight effect, but not as drastic. So, and you can get that monochromatic effect also by allowing some of that base layer to shine through, which was really the idea that I wanted to toy around with this. I wanted it to be a sort of very umber based painting. I didn't want a lot of other colours to be involved, but as you can see, there's some tiny amount of rudimentary, well, I shouldn't use the word rudimentary, there's a tiny amount of dark greens up there, which are sort of like foliage on this cave here, on this tomb. And then there's going to be the focal point of the painting, which is inside the tomb itself. Originally, I wanted the tomb to be almost Etruscan in style, maybe Greek, or Spanish, in the sense that if you look at a lot of for example, the areas around Malaga. I'm trying to think of the region's name. Where is Malaga? it's just completely gone out of my head. But anyway, if you look up the area, like as in the greater area of where Malaga is in Spain, because I've been there, you'll find places, for example, that are very, in the rural areas, very, almost desert-esque. And in these areas, they built these incredible cave houses and tombs, where there would be little carved out sort of windows in these tombs where, they would put the dead's, remains, usually in urns. The Greeks did the same thing. The Etruscans did the same thing in Italy. So there's a lot of ancient civilizations that, and obviously then medieval societies that were taking from these ancient civilizations, that have used tombs in these ways, natural caves that they've made into tombs, and then added little windows for example, urns or pickled remains or whatever to be stored in these little areas. But I think I originally was going to go for this sort of window idea, and then decided, something, I'd actually rather have them be doorways. I think I'd much rather have them almost, or crawl spaces, tunnels, crawl spaces, doorways, something like that. And the reason for this is because I find it a lot more exciting to think that, you can go through these dark, ominous passageways, and there's crypts and tombs and adventures and goodness knows what down there, and who knows what a sort of labyrinth lies beneath, and that really excites me. And so I made them doorways instead of windows. As you can see, I'm adding in my strongest colours of the painting, and that's why this cave entrance is the focal point, because that's where all the light is, really, apart from the moon. So, my brightest brights are these oranges and yellows, giving the indication of candlelight. Someone's in there. You can't see them, but they're in there. What's going on? What's happening in this cave? This mystery, this drama that's going on. Why is there someone in the cave? What are they doing? What's their purpose? In the dead of night, the dark, this dreary tomb for, ancient, long dead people. Why are they in there? What sort of ceremonies are they doing? What sort of intriguing rituals are going on in there? And the only light that they have at their disposal is candlelight. And I don't know, there's something that just gets my imagination going when it comes to that sort of thing. So that's why I'm adding in these sort of orange yellowish colours to give the indication of a sort of subdued candlelight coming from the inside of the cave, and that makes your focal point in that cave. But then, as you can see, look at how dark these doorways or crawl spaces are. You've got these dark, sort of creepy entranceways inside the vestibule or main cave entranceway. You've got these further passageways that lead deeper and deeper into the crypts, into the bosom of the earth, and that just makes me go wild, man. I just love finding places like this in real life. I've been all over Greece, I've been all over Italy, I've been all over Spain. I've been so lucky in terms of being able to explore the world, finding a lot of these incredible places, these caves, these cave dwellings, tombs, crypts, all sorts of things. And so a lot of that is coming into my painting. Another thing is that I feel like burial places for the dead, I think they have a unique stillness to them. A stillness that almost feels like you're disrupting something completely sacred. And I think that, again, someone in the dead of night with candlelight, hiding in the corner of this tomb. Yeah, there's something just so mysterious and interesting about that. The fact that they're disturbing this still sacred space like that, and for what purpose? So yeah, I love that. I just love that sort of energy and atmosphere. So I find things like this so exciting to paint. I did this over a 2-week period, as I mentioned earlier. Originally my painting with Stephen episodes were 1 a week, and I still might do 1 a week, but right now I'm actually enjoying the pacing of doing 1 every 2 weeks, because it makes it a little bit more leisurely, and it makes it a little bit more fun, and it also still means that my output is decent, but I'm also getting the time to actually really flesh these things out, not panicking or stressing out too much, making sure that they're up to a relatively okay standard. The thing is, right, I think realistically, when you're painting, even 1 painting every 2 weeks or 1 painting every week, you're just simply not going to get the time to just add all of these ridiculous finicky little details in, but you can still produce really emotive, emotionally powerful works. And I think that's the goal, isn't it? That's the aim of the art game. If you want this almost sterile photorealistic image, then you would go and you would take a photograph. I think a lot of the enjoyment and excitement from painting something like this, apart from the fact that it's a made-up composition that doesn't exist in real life, is the fact that you can play around with textures, colours that maybe wouldn't necessarily exist. Hey ho. As you can see, I'm painting the staircase right now that's obviously carved into the rock that the cave is also made out of, and so it's carved straight into this solid rock, which I like again, like I've been to places like that before. Right here in my county of Ayrshire, there are incredible caves that were used in the War of Independence, and the Covenanters also repurposed a lot of them and made their own to hide from the government. And a lot of these caves were very similar to this, actually, very ornate sometimes inside, where you would actually, they carved straight into the solid rock, and then you would walk down these carved stairs into big caves where there's windows and seats and ornate ceilings carved into these caves that a lot of the time were used for mass ceremonies, to hold prayers, to hold Sunday mass, all this sort of stuff. But also in terms of the Wars of Independence, they were used by guerrilla fighters to sequester themselves away and hide from the English. So yeah, lots of history of sort of caves and like troglodytism in Ayrshire, which is very, very interesting. And you see these staircases carved into the solid rock happen quite often in Ayrshire, actually, which is really, really fascinating. And again, like I've said it actually a few times on this channel, and I'll say it again. See if any of you, the viewers, if any of you guys are coming to Ayrshire or coming to Scotland, let me know, and I'll come and meet you and show you a lot of this stuff, because it's awesome. I promise you, it's worth it. Scotland has so many incredible things to offer, so much drama, so much atmosphere, so much great history, so it's worth it. So if you're ever thinking about making the trip, do so, and I'll take the time to meet you. I'll come out and I'll show you some of the incredible history that we have here. But yeah, like I think when you look at things like this, right, caves and mysterious dwellings and stuff like this, it's interesting that just they do instantly evoke something. They instantly evoke this sort of I think uneasy feeling in a lot of people, which is interesting, because like once upon a time they probably would have been hubs of communities. So yeah, it's fascinating that places that actually a lot of the time would have been reasonably well populated and reasonably well intentioned have become so mysterious, right? So enigmatic and almost dark in atmosphere. In order to get the ground here, a lot of the time I just sort of muck around to add texture and earth tones. Sometimes I use knives, sometimes I use brushes, to create this sort of impression of rocks and different little things, different sort of variations of height, whatever. Just add in some texture, just add in some colour, add in some interesting stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that in a way you should even think about it too much. I think a lot of people in a way almost overthink it, because eventually, like, again, like, you're gonna almost hinder yourself, I think, if you overthink a lot of how to do this sort of stuff. Like, you'll end up getting painter's block. I know usually it's writer's block, but you'll end up getting painter's block, and you'll end up almost going, you'll be paralyzed. You'll go, oh no, how am I gonna, make this like look like there's all these teeny little rocks lying on the ground? Like, how am I gonna do that? How am I gonna give the indication of that? Are the people that look at my paintings gonna think that, it's shit because it doesn't look like the ground outside from my house? I don't think so, personally. I don't think that's really how it works. I think most people, again, they want to feel something from a painting. I don't think they even necessarily care that much about, like the nitty gritty details. I think, not that I'm a fan of modern art, right? And I'm really not a fan of modern art in the sense that it really doesn't fit the true definition of art to me, in the sense that there's no symbolic value, there's no deeper meaning, blah blah blah, whatever. But I'm not going to rant on about that. But I think one interesting thing that modern art has shown us, and that, you know, all the way back in the 1800s, things like Impressionism and Cubism and playing around with abstraction really shows us, is that a lot of people just get emotional responses from color usage, shapes, like, you know, vibes, to use that word. You know, they just get instant impulse responses almost. They get, and some people just want, like, oh, I like blue paintings, or I like purple paintings. You know, if people are at that stage of just sort of going, you know, I like it because it makes me feel something because it's blue or purple, or, oh, I like the way the colours are sort of gelling together on this one, you know, and it's just a canvas of, you know, random colours gel together. Like, if we're at that stage of art, right, then one thing that does teach you, I think, is if you're painting maybe slightly more symbolic or stylistic or elaborate paintings, you know, however you want to describe them, or photorealistic paintings, whatever you're painting, I think what you should do is you should take that on board almost in a way, and you should learn from that, and you should go, well, okay then, I'm gonna, you know, try and make this an emotionally powerful piece and tell the story that I want to tell, and paint the architecture that I want to paint, or the atmospheres that I want to create. But realistically, a lot of how I do that is just completely free and easy. It doesn't matter. You can spend hours and hours toiling over little details, or you can do the opposite. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of people just pick up, and as you can see, look, right now I'm going in with a fine detail brush and adding in little bumps and little rocks and little indications and little different things here. So again, I do care. You know, like, I do like to add in some little details here and there, and to, you know, give the indication of, you know, rocks on the floor and different things like that. But I'm just saying, you know, maybe it wouldn't even really make that much of a difference to the average viewer. Realistically, I don't know, but, you know, it's food for thought anyway. It's food for thought. If you're out there, don't allow yourself to be put off by, oh, I can't do that. Just go and do it. Just sketch something out and paint it. Just add colour onto a canvas and see what happens. That is the best way to go about anything. Just do it. And yeah, so just very quickly, I want to tell you how I'm making this fog colour that I'm about to add in. That is mostly umber, believe it or not. I know it looks very light grey, but it's mostly umber with a tiny bit of Payne's grey and then some white. That's how you get that sort of ghostly, umberish smoke look. And yeah, like, that's the end result. I quite like it. I quite like it. I think that it has sort of an atmosphere to it, I think. And, you know, yeah, I'm sort of just, I'm happy with sort of the monochromatic element of it. I'm happy with the stairs. You know, I quite like the sort of tomb and the way that the little doorways turned out. So yeah, this is episode 22. And, you know, I'm excited to paint episode 23, and I've not got a good idea yet, but I know I'll come up with one in the next few days. So, you know, I hope you tune in for episode 23, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has, you know, inspired you to go out and paint your own stuff and get creating, and, thank you so much for tuning in. See you next episode, and goodbye.